Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome to the Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I'm so excited. This is my very first podcast, and I'm just so excited to be sharing what I plan on sharing with you. So, here's my hope for this podcast. My hope is that through sharing my story and sharing stories, perhaps of others that I've met along my path in life, and also bringing guests onto the podcast, my hope is that I can help empower you, help you feel connected, and that you're not alone. So, let's talk about what this podcast is about. I think in order to start there, I have to first share a little bit about where I come from and what led me here to be hanging out with you. So, my name is Angie, and I'm the adoption coach. But that's not the only hat that I wear. Actually, the first hat that I ever wore, in my adult life was working in the autism field. I worked in the autism realm for, I don't know, about 24 years. And while doing that work that just I love so, so much, meeting families and working with individuals on the spectrum. While doing that work, I was so intrigued by unique speech differences, and so went back to school and got my master's as a speech and language pathologist. And while finishing up my degree, I went right back into the autism world because that truly is where my heart is and was at the time. Also, along that path, shortly after getting my first career, I became a mom. My daughter is now 22 as of the recording of this first podcast, and she herself is a mom. She has two little ones. So I was first mom as a bio mom, and then about 10 years after that, right after I got my master's degree, actually, I decided to explore the world of becoming a foster parent. And going into being a foster parent, so much training about trauma and attachment. And then we had several foster placements in and out of our home, and then I became an adoptive mom. I met my son when he was 5 at the time, and as of today, he's 18. So, what led me to creating this podcast was that going into being a parent, even before my bio daughter was born, I already had quite a few tools in my parenting tool bag because of the work that I do professionally. I had many different teaching techniques and behavior management techniques, um, language building techniques. I mean, man, I knew more than probably the average parent going into parenting because of the work that I do. So then 10 years later, going into parenting my son, and I guess to backtrack, I felt like as as mom of my daughter, I felt really good about being a mom. I felt really confident in my skills. Things went really well. If she was having a hard time, I felt just so natural and comfortable, stepping up to the plate to advocate for her or help her through, whatever she was struggling with. But then fast forward 10 years, like I said, and prior to our son joining our home, I had a significant amount of training, as I had mentioned, not only in autism at that point, but also in in trauma and attachment. And I really wanted to make sure before he joined our family that I had a good sense of how to be the best mom, right? I already had evidence that I could be a really good mom, and I was very proud of that. I was proud of, the things that my daughter learned and how she navigated the world. I was so proud of her. So then my son joins our family, and he has such a big heart. And right away, I mean, I fell in love with him the moment I met him, if I'm being super honest. He greeted us with this great big hug, and he was just so excited to join our family. And I thought, how could we not love this little guy? But very quickly in our relationship, behaviors escalated. Um, with my son, we saw unusual challenges that I couldn't even have anticipated despite all of the training that I had been through. Nonetheless, I was pulling out every strategy that I had in my tool bag to try to manage his behaviors, to try to help curb what was happening in our home. I was trying so hard to fix things and to help him and to, I don't know, recreate or find peace in our home again. Because what was once a calm, peaceful, playful kind of home quickly became a tense, stressful, not so silly and playful home anymore. And I really struggled with that. I kept trying. I got my son into every level of care that I could get him in and trying to find him so much help, and nothing was working. And in fact, when I took a step back and reflected on what was happening in my home, it was actually my trying so hard, doing so many things. What I feel so strongly is what made our relationship worse. It's what made things so incredibly hard between the two of us. I imagine that he probably started to resent me, started to resent that mom was trying to fix him, as if I thought he was broken. It hurts to say that out loud, but it was my reality. I didn't know how else to see things. However, what I learned in being his mom was that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes trying to use behavior management strategies isn't what our kids need. Sometimes they need very different approaches from us as parents. Sometimes as parents, we need very different tools than what the experts are telling us that we need. Because boy, oh boy, I had access to so many experts. Like I said, I worked in behavioral health and worked with brilliant psychologists and therapists and people who I really look up to for their ability to effectively help parents. And somehow it wasn't working for me. Not only seeking advice from my colleagues, but also, like I said, um, working closely with clinicians who are working with my son. And so fast forward, right? So things got really tricky between my relationship with my son. Things got so challenging that it got to the point that I felt helpless. I felt like I had no other options, and I was questioning whether or not that I could parent my son. I was questioning whether or not I had made a good choice to have my son in our family. And it was so incredibly hard and isolating to feel those feelings, but it was my reality. And I couldn't see that there was any way out. I felt so victim to his behaviors. And when I was feeling this way, oh man, I beat myself up so much. I just kept thinking like, how can I be so great in some areas of my life? I was successful in my career. I felt successful as a mom of my daughter, but I could not figure out how to connect with my son, how to build a relationship with my son. I couldn't figure it out. And I kept feeling these awful feelings when it came to my relationship with my son, and it had a huge impact on our relationship. So, like I said, fast forward a couple of years after things really got to their worst in my relationship with my son, and I ended up hiring a mindset coach. I actually hired her for business related reasons, not at all about relationships. But I had worked with her closely for, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe it was 2 months, I don't know. I didn't really keep track of that part, but I had been there for such a short time, and all of a sudden, my eyes just opened, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Holy cow, this is what I needed when things were so hard with my son. I needed a mindset coach to help me shift the way that I was thinking, the way that I was feeling, and the way that I was showing up for my son. Because, oh man, if people in my life at that time knew and heard me say, I'm doing all the things, I'm doing everything I could possibly do. I would even have people confirming, like, Angie, you're doing everything that you could possibly be doing for your son. I don't know what else to tell you to do. Well, I'm here to tell you, as you're listening to this podcast, that it isn't actually about your doing. It's about who you're being. Yeah. It's about who you're being. It isn't about another behavior management strategy or following another expert. It is about learning key tools that you can use in the moment to shift the way that you're thinking and feeling because our kids know. And especially my son, because of his tricky past, he is so intuitive. He could sense when I was frustrated, I think before I could. His ability to tune into my feelings was so spot on. And I know that so many of our kids are like that too, that they know when we're frustrated. They know when we're trying to fake it. And so, my hope with this podcast is that with each episode as we move forward, that I will be empowering you with insight about how to shift your thinking, with about practical tools that you can use in the moments that are the trickiest for you. And I really hope that you feel that you're not alone because you are a good parent. You are doing the very best that you can with what you know today. And I'm glad that you're here because it tells me that you want to change. You want to do things differently because you know that your relationship with your kiddos matters so incredibly much. So, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I am looking forward to future episodes, and I would love, love, love if you would share any feedback, send me an email, share your ideas, because I want this podcast to be for you. It isn't about me at all. I am going to use my story as I share insights and share strategies because it's my story, right? But I want this podcast to be about you, and I want to be sharing things that help you move the needle forward for your family. That's my goal. So thank you. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you. We will talk soon. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.